Welcome everyone to Milfuzz TV. I am Peter and today I'm going to be talking about Unreal Season 2 Episode 5. It's called Infiltration. So spoilers for the episode. As always, this is a Patreon sponsored review, so thank you very much to Board Now for picking the show. So yeah, this one's got some big dramatic moments. I mean, this show kind of always has big dramatic moments. They kind of get out of their way to orchestrate them. It's kind of part of the point of what the characters are doing. But what I'm getting at though is, the show keeps surprising me almost with like how heinous some of the things that Quinn and Rachel, more so Quinn in this case, although Rachel ultimately ends up agreeing with her, but like how much they're willing to put someone through for the sake of what will be good on TV. Ruby being the main victim here than anyone else. But this is something that's rippling through everyone. This episode's got the whole kind of rivalry kind of brewing between the team of Rachel and Coleman, and then we also have Quinn kind of on the receiving end of their kind of decisions and game playing. So Quinn retaliates and she's got like her big moves to play. Because the first half of the episode, it really feels like Quinn is just constantly getting beat down with the idea that she's not going to the fancy award ceremony that she's getting dressed up for because the showrunner's got tickets to go, and Coleman's technically the showrunner, so he's taking Rachel. She shows up anyway, of course, later on, but is very much played in the moment as Rachel choosing to tell her that she's going to go, which is notable because in the first scene where Coleman brings it up to Rachel, she's like, that feels weird, maybe we shouldn't, that's Quinn's thing. But when Quinn gets a little catty with her, Rachel's willing to break that news out and use it to put her down, to feel better about herself. And I think the bigger thing for me, before we get into the details of what they end up doing for the show and the girls during the episode, is that Quinn, ever since she's felt betrayed by Rachel, has been very scorched earth, which has not been that long, it's been like 2 episodes, but it's felt like there's been no give in that. It's been constant ire, constant like side eye, snappy attitude, whatever. I think there's a moment towards the end of this episode where it felt like that kind of faded away for a second, and not because they made up, not because they're in a better place. If anything, they're in an even worse place because it feels like the rivalry's bubbling at this point. But there's a moment where she says to Rachel, basically a warning. She warns her that Coleman is her Chet and that he will use her, and she will be coming up with the ideas that Coleman will take credit for. And Rachel, of course, battles that with, he is not Chet, right? In 5 years, I'm going to have my own show. I'm going to be with someone who loves me. And she has this kind of fantasy of where it's going. And I think what's so interesting about the writing of this scene in particular, and this kind of back and forth between them, as basically Quinn is looking at her and seeing a younger version of herself and sees her making the same mistakes, although with the little tinge that she adds on that, you're not me though, you won't survive what I went through, so you'll be chewed up and spat out, right? So there's a little bit of that superiority coming into it. But at the same time, Rachel, of course, fights back with like what she thinks is happening. What I think is interesting about this is that I think we, the audience, don't really know for sure how right either of them are. Because on the one hand, yeah, Rachel feels like she's, it comes across a little delusional when she puts her foot down and says, no, I'm with someone who cares about me and I'm going to be successful in the next 5 years. It does feel a little delusional when she says that sentence. But to be honest, up until this point, I don't know if Coleman's like behavior necessarily feels exactly like Chet to me. At least not in the same way. Like I could see that Coleman is the sort of guy who's like wooing her and saying we'll take on the world together, and I can see how that could be compared to maybe how the Chet and Quinn relationship started back in the day. You can kind of imagine that's how they talk to each other, right? Once upon a time. But at the very least, and we don't really know a lot about Coleman's personal life, admittedly, at this point, but there's been nothing to hint that he is like Chet in terms of being a womanizer, in terms of sneaking around and all the drug use and all the rest of it that we know Chet for. Maybe that's something that wasn't there to begin with him either, and it developed over time. Maybe Quinn is recognizing something that we can't see because she experienced this. She saw Chet 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever it was. So I think there's an interesting little bit of like just an unsure quality of who to actually believe here, and they both might, to some extent, be wrong. They both might be to some extent be right. It's tough to say because while Quinn is the wiser one, she's speaking from experience. There's also an element of maybe she's projecting a little bit. Like maybe she is assuming that it's going to go exactly the same way that it did for her, and she's warning Rachel for that because, frankly, she can't imagine that it could go better for Rachel. Like it's almost maybe even a hope almost that like I didn't meet the magical man that made my life better. It turned out to be full of pain and misery, and it's going to happen to her because it wouldn't be fair if it didn't, kind of thing. There's a bit of projection going on there. But the moment, though, that makes it feel more genuine, though, is when she gets a little bit more serious and kind of, like, drops the anger, which Quinn's had with Rachel for episodes at this point, and just kind of says, like, I'm serious, he's a user, watch out for yourself. There's a little moment right at the end of it where it feels like the character that Quinn's been playing, and not that it's been like she's faking it, I'm not saying that, but like she drops the angry character that she's had and just tries to say something genuine, even though they aren't in a better place, even though they haven't made up. She has no reason to be like all of a sudden wanting to be the wise teacher of Rachel again, but it shows that she still cares about her. It shows that she still is concerned and she still wants to mentor in some way, even though sometimes it feels like she's constantly not giving Rachel chances. And that's obviously how Rachel feels. It's why Rachel's kind of rebelled. It's a very mother-daughter relationship in a lot of ways, where the kids wanting more free will, more reign to do what they want. The mother's sort of saying, yeah, you're getting there, I'm proud of you, but then sort of taking the reins back. Like, that's kind of what happened in the first couple of episodes of the season. But ultimately, I think this little moment shows that she still cares about Rachel and that she still wants to look out for her in her own twisted kind of way. And I think it's interesting how that parallels with what goes on with Jeremy in this episode, to a point, not the ending, but like the whole thing where Jeremy and Chet go out to a fire and Chet tries to have Jeremy go through his spiritual reawakening that like he did. And he basically says, hey, admit what you've done wrong, admit your truth. And he slaps him when he keeps blaming other people, and until he eventually says, it's Rachel, I hate her. And whose fault is that? It's mine, because I loved her, because I do love her. That entire conversation is about Jeremy admitting that he still loves Rachel, and that's why he's still angry and miserable. It's why he's still doing things to try and get back at her. There's kind of a resentment there, and the resentment only exists because he still loves her. I think it's interesting that this moment with Quinn towards the end of the episode is kind of a similar thing. It doesn't spell it out, but it's kind of signaling to the audience that she still loves Rachel, and it's still something she's trying to kind of break through, even if they're still going to be fighting for a while. If Rachel's not ready to admit that her boyfriend is maybe going to be a bad one at some point. And won't he? Is it more interesting if he's exactly what Quinn says he is? Or is it more interesting, perhaps, if he isn't what Quinn says he is, but ultimately it still flounders? Like, there's a number of ways they could play this, and I'm not really sure which would be the most fascinating or the most character enriching of the bunch. So I'll just have to wait and see what they do with that. But that is interesting, and it does lead to the dark ending with Jeremy, where they kind of leave it in an okay place, Rachel and Coleman, but he does choose to go home alone. And it kind of feels like because Rachel picked Quinn's idea in the heat of the moment, which we'll get to, he kind of feels a little bit like, oh, you took her side. So they kind of act like it's still okay, but there's maybe a little bit of a feeling there. During the walk away, though, when Rachel's walking to the outfit truck because she borrowed a dress for the award show, Jeremy, you can see him inside the camera truck opening the fridge. And he's been drinking like all episodes, so he's pretty drunk by this point. He was pissing in Coleman's car earlier on, or at least on Coleman's car, because Coleman came and demoted him to like inserts, meaning he was basically getting B-roll and like pickup footage and not the main DP like he has been. And this is all coming from the fact that he sees a photo of Rachel that's been shot by Jeremy, and he gets all kind of boyfriendy about it, and it's it's a kind of petty. It feels childish. It's definitely maybe the example we get in the episode of Coleman being childish, and that he does have an immature side. Obviously, they keep talking about the fact that he's technically quite young for the role that he's in. Quinn keeps bringing up how young his balls are. But this action where he goes to Jeremy to sort of like wave his dick at him, basically, does feel quite childish. It feels like he's throwing his weight around. Anyway, Jeremy confronts Rachel in the costumes truck and kind of like gets in her face. She says she doesn't want to talk. And to be honest, like, in credit to the direction here, because it kind of felt sinister the second he sort of started walking towards the truck. It kind of felt like, oh god, where is this going? I was getting kind of worried. I was worried exactly how far this was going to go. It did go to a dark place because he does hit her. She slaps him to try and get away from him first. Because he's like grabbing her face and like saying, you're a cancer, you're sick, you've done this to me. I can't remember the exact wording, but it was that kind of phrases. And then when she slaps him to get away, he slaps her back and it knocks her to the ground. And it's actually Chet, of all people, who comes in and pulls him away and yells, "I tried to help you, not like this," and kind of throws him away and tells him he's fired. Chet fires Jeremy. Now, I don't think Jeremy's gone from the show, so I'm curious to see how he'll still be there. Maybe he'll be missing for an episode or two. I could see them doing that, maybe. But I do think that's interesting. I'll be curious to see what they do with that. But yeah, definitely a darker ending. The episode ends with Rachel like sitting there with a cut to black, and it's obviously it's such a complex moment because obviously she's just been hit by an ex-boyfriend across the face. That feels quite violent. It feels obviously that she is definitely the victim physically in the scene. But the feeling I had when she was lying there, kind of like thinking about what just happened, was more kind of like, it felt more like she was kind of reckoning and thinking about what's led to this moment and all the things that happened between her and Jeremy, and now what's happening with Quinn. Because this is the thing, her entire like relationship with Jeremy broke down, and she kind of, was doing all that stuff behind his back with Adam, and it led to like what happened in season 1. And then she did stuff behind Quinn's back, and it led to their falling out, and they're at this really bad place where they're, things aren't good. They're at a heated rivalry, and it feels like she keeps like alienating people to the point where they hate her. So it doesn't justify what Jeremy did here. This is like asshole behavior, but it does kind of feel like she's sitting there contemplating what just happened to her. It does kind of feel like she's thinking about, what her part in all this has been, and that it keeps happening. She keeps making people hate her, and it's led to like the more extreme outcome here. Jeremy clearly is unwell, and he's partly on. I mean, again, kind of like what Chet was saying, it's not all on Rachel. Part of it is Jeremy's fault. Like, he is to blame for falling in and not falling in love, but falling in the way he did, and sort of like kind of like going all for it with Rachel, even though they'd already had incidents in the past. Like he could have used better judgment. He's definitely to blame, and certainly the way he's acting now is not in any way justified by anything that's happened in the past. But it's really fascinating to think about just the show as a whole, that a lot of it is kind of like the warpath, like the ashes and the carnage that's left behind Rachel's wake. And it's almost like some of the people from her recent past that are still obviously part of her life, but like things in recent history are really starting to kind of erupt into her face now. I mean, literally in this case, but this idea that like eventually it's like, who can she actually rely on to still be there next year? It actually makes it really funny in a dark way when she said a couple of scenes before this, "Oh, Coleman's going to be there in 5 years with me. We're going to be happy and successful together." Because it feels like every time she thinks she's got a future with someone, within a few months or a couple of episodes in the TV show, it seems like it's not only not happening, it's ruined, it's obliterated, it's been nuked from orbit. And it feels like the way Rachel has got a lot to do with that. So I think there's kind of almost like a rude awakening like on her face as she's thinking about this at the end of the episode. At least that's what I felt in the moment. So yeah, all that stuff is obviously I've kind of skipped to the end of everything because that was like the super dramatic stuff. The big thing, of course, they do in this episode that's super dark, or not even dark's maybe even not the right word, but they have this whole like first overnight date thing planned, right? And Quinn rigs it so he can only pick between two particular girls because he knows he'll pick option A over option B, Hot Rachel being the one she wants him to pick. And basically, because it's Rachel has blabbed, and we don't know this in advance, we don't know that Rachel has blabbed to the other girl that Hot Rachel has been having sex with someone in the crew, right? Because that was the thing that happened at the start of the episode, is that Rachel catches Hot Rachel coming out of the trailer. Jeremy throws back some digs about her sleeping with the boss, and it's, again, very uneasy. It feels uncomfortable and awkward and all that. So during the whole ceremony, we're getting a decision, right? Where Darius is going to choose who he's spending the night with. The other girl just bursts out, "Oh, she's sleeping with the crew. She's been sleeping with one of the crew. I'm here for you," and she's having it off with other people, and everyone is shocked to hear this. It's actually quite sad in a lot of ways because Jay gets so excited when this moment happens because Darius basically calls an audible and picks Ruby, and he's been so excited that Ruby's been making progress with him, and he thanks Rachel even for getting manipulative about the whole situation, and he's all excited. But even he's not clean this episode because even he kind of, well, he protests at first when he finds out Quinn has a bunch of extra cameras in Darius's room. He kind of just gives in when he's basically said, "Hey, this will be your success when this all goes well." They dangled at the first black couple, the first black love story on Everlasting. They dangle that in his face, and he kind of accepts it, and he watches the date play out. He sees them start to have sex. Of course, Quinn's got a plan in all this, and that plan is to bring in Ruby's father, who's an actor that I very much recognize from multiple things. I could not tell you the name of him. Maybe if I get him on IMDb here, I can go. Carl Lumbly. I do not recognize the name, but I've definitely seen his face on a bunch of things, and I'm sure he's done a lot of voice acting work as well. He's one of those guys that's kind of been around a whole lot. Yeah, he was in Supergirl. He was in that new Captain America. I didn't see that, but he was in that. But he's got a really good voice. He's got a really good voice, this guy. But yeah, he shows up as Ruby's father. Quinn has him flown in, and they basically set it up so that he will walk in. Not that Quinn could have known it would have been this perfect, but he walks in whilst Ruby's having sex on camera. And Ruby doesn't know she's on camera. That's a very important point to make here. Ruby and Darius think that the one camera's been turned away and that they're not being seen. Instead, it's all being captured, and her dad sees it, and then they take her dad to the door and have him walk in and make a fuss, and and there's a whole moment here where Rachel's like and Coleman are telling people to put the cameras down, and they're blocking it, and Quinn just says, "Okay, you can block this. You have the power to do that. But this is good TV, Rachel. You know that this is what we create, and that this is going to be the best thing for the show." And Rachel just thinks about it for a second and kind of reluctantly gives the okay for the cameras to go in. This is the moment that Coleman feels like betrayed, maybe a strong word, but certainly that's the moment that he feels like Rachel's picked a side that wasn't his. So, they go in, and the dad says, "Hey, you have been so successful. You've been this protester, this activist, and you've ended up here." And he insults Darius. He says Darius is just a dumb billionaire football player, and kind of, gets a little bit. I mean, he's not even directing it at him. He's talking to his daughter, but he's saying some mean things about Darius. And when Ruby says she's not coming home with them, she's going to stay on the show, he says that he's ashamed of her. He also points out in the middle of all this that, whenever they search her name on the internet, all they're going to find first is this show, and potentially, photos or clips from this night, from this moment kind of thing. So it's a really sad moment, and I think one of the best things about this episode, actually, so there's been a lot of good stuff that I've talked about, everything with Rachel, Quinn, even the Jeremy stuff and how that's all kind of mirroring each other, it's all really good. But one of the things that I liked about this, and it's almost a shame that Ruby ends up leaving the episode, later on, because Darius decides to send her home because he does think that she deserves better than him, and that he can't measure up to the sort of guy that she thinks that he is or could be. Is that it does genuinely feel like they're connecting, and it feels like, you know, he doesn't admit that he's hurt and that he can't play football anymore, but he does say that he's thinking about, what if I don't play anymore? Could I be someone more normal? And she says she would like that, so it feels like she's accepting for who he might become soon. You know, she won't be disappointed in the way that a lot of other people will be if he can't play the sport anymore. And, you know, she's opening up, and, you know, after they have this bit with the dad, like, you know, they're sort of sitting snuggling outside, and even as soon as he leaves, even he's sort of holding her and sort of comforting her. It feels kind of genuine. It feels quite sweet, almost to the point where she had to be sent home just for the sake of the rest of the season, in terms of like the real, you know, for UnReal, the actual TV show we're watching, because it felt like, how could any of the other girls ever stand a chance now? Because Ruby and him have like a genuine, actual, what feels real connection. It feels like they've actually got feelings for each other, and it does feel like it's not been manipulated. It feels natural, and they actually share a couple of sweet moments together, where she says, hey, you could be so much more. You could use your voice. Because that's one of the things the dad criticizes him for, is that, hey, he's got this platform. He's a millionaire, and he doesn't use his platform to do more things for the black community. That was kind of the gist of what he was saying at one point. And he's like, you know, I'm just a dumb football player. And it's like, no, you're not. I know you're more than that, and I know you can be more than that. And it feels quite healthy, until ultimately he, in the process of the elimination, which they do that night, Quinn insists they do an eliminator round that night. After he eliminates the other girl who told him about Hot Rachel, he basically says Hot Rachel maybe made some mistakes, but we all make mistakes. We can learn from them. You told me about it, though, just to put her down and just to get her in trouble, to scheme. So he sends her home, and then he sends Ruby home. He kind of calls an audible again and just sends a second girl home, even though he's not supposed to. And it's quite heartfelt. She's genuinely upset. She's asking him not to, and he's kind of giving his reasons and saying, no, you deserve to go find the person that's better than me and do who you're going to do, you know, go do what you're going to do and be who you're going to be. And but it honestly feels quite genuine. It felt like a nice, genuine through line to the episode, in a weird way that I think made Darius a slightly deeper character. It made Ruby a deeper character. It's a shame she's not going to be here anymore, seemingly. And I think that it you know, it upsets Jay. I should mention that, but it does feel kind of like, I don't know. There's something. It feels genuinely new for the show, right? Obviously, there's been lots of moments throughout the first season and so far this season where, you know, maybe Rachel's actually into someone, or maybe it's more weirdly scheming or something like that. Maybe someone's actually falling for Adam in season 1, or Adam's actually falling for someone in season 1. And even when it was like Adam and Rachel starting to like glance at each other and there was chemistry, the chemistry always felt real, the chemistry always felt natural, but it never really felt like it was romance in that sense. Whereas this actually did feel like romance. It felt like something was building, and it felt heartfelt when he kind of made the choice to get rid of her just purely because he doesn't think he's good enough for her, and that she shouldn't be on this show anymore. And you know, we could debate if, like, you know, that's the right thing to do. Like, is he making that choice for her? You know, is that something that he should, you know, should he be taking that upon himself to make that choice? Should he be, you know, maybe not eliminating her, but like saying all this to her after the fact so that she can agree to be eliminated next time, maybe, like, or if you know, if he can convince her, kind of thing. You know, he's kind of making the choice for her, which in a lot of ways it sounds like her father, as much as he's this, you know, man who has a lot of ideals and he's had his daughter propped up to kind of continue with those ideals. It feels like maybe he is quite, you know, I wouldn't say controlling. I don't think he's controlling, but like, there's a lot to live up to. And her dad, you know, tried to come in and make this choice for her to take her away from the show, and then another man just did it instead. Weirdly, the one thing that her father will approve of is that Darius made this choice for her, but in both cases, a man tried to make a choice for her. And I think there's maybe something interesting to think about there. So anyway, yeah, so there's some nuance to this. There's some nuance to it, which I think is And I'm not saying that makes Darius like an asshole and misogynist. I'm not saying that. It's arguably that this one decision is him being inconsiderate of the fact that this should be maybe more her choice than his. Except for obviously the rules of the TV show, which they've all agreed to. Obviously, I mean, I get that that's a thing here too, but like, for forgetting the TV show part of it, and just the idea that he's going out of his way to do this thing as if it's what's best for her, right? Rather than because he's playing the game of the TV show. I think that's incredibly interesting, and it makes it feel like he's got the best of intentions in what he's doing there, or maybe you could argue that it's not. Maybe you're arguing that this is his insecurities, that he's scared that he can't live up to what she thinks he is, and he's backing away from it. And this is actually kind of a tragic character moment for him. So not only is he making this choice for her, he's effectively running scared from maybe the best relationship that he was ever maybe going to have, because it was built on something different than just, oh, girl is hot, we're going to have sex. And I'm like, maybe he had deeper relationships than that before, I don't know. But certainly, based on everything else on the show and how they're all throwing themselves at him, that's kind of all we've really seen. So, yeah. So I think that stuff's really quite good. Yeah. Was there anything else that's worth diving into? Oh, yeah, we should mention so a big part of the whole ruse is that Quinn starts chatting up the guy that just bought like the network that the show's on. Like he bought the whole media empire that owns the network, that owns the show, so he's like the tip top. Because Rachel and Coleman try and talk to him and woo him a little bit, and then that's when Quinn makes her grand entrance, and it turns out that he knows who Quinn is, he knows she's the real showrunner, and he's much more interested in talking to her. There's even maybe a little bit of an attraction there. Speaking of actors that I recognize, actually, this guy's also been in stuff before, but he like even invites Quinn back to his place at the end of the episode. He's very impressed with all the TV he's actually quite attracted to all the things he's doing. He also seems to really like the racist girl because he thinks it's good TV, and he's excited at the prospect of her taking a black man home to her southern Alabama family, I think was roughly how he put it. So yeah, he's excited to meet her. We don't actually get to see that meeting though. I was kind of hoping we'd see it just to see how he actually handles that, and is he giddy? Is he like pervy because he's attracted to her? Is that part of it? I don't know. But he does kind of hit on Quinn, and Quinn finally says, because she sort of gives a vague excuse why she can, and he's like, that's very vague. And then she admits that it's her father's funeral the next day, which is actually a pretty good excuse not to go home with someone. It also says that she doesn't even have a coffin yet, and he says that there's coffins at Costco, so they go to Costco together. And worth mentioning that Chet witnesses some of this little final bit. He sees her with his coat around her, and that they go off together, and, so, and I'm not rooting for Chet to get Quinn back. Like, I don't think that's something that we should be rooting for. I feel like they were unhealthy for each other, and it seems like something that we should, like, if Chet's really going to grow, it really should be for him to grow up and realize that he shouldn't be going after Quinn, right? Maybe he wants to like have a responsible role in the making of the show because he still feels a connection to that and he's still proud of it or whatever. Also, he got bailed out of jail. I can't believe after the big ending of last episode where he get carted off in handcuffs, he just shows up early on in this episode and says he got bailed out, and that's it. That's all it really was. Yeah, and I'm still, I'm not saying that stuff won't be important later, and it's obviously thematically very important because it's stuff that he's admitting that he didn't make a mistake. It's not like he didn't understand the rules. He did it intentionally because he wanted to break the rules and see his son, and he's, that's part of what he's admitting that he's done around the campfire later on. Anyway, yeah, I think that's the main stuff that was worth talking about. I'm sure there was some little moments because I really jumped around in order with that one, just because a lot of big stuff happened at the end that really felt worth talking about. But that is episode 5 of UnReal from season 2. By all means, let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. Of course, you can support the show and the channel by going to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV or becoming a YouTube member. But Patreon gets you all the bonuses for the movie channel as well, so worth having a look and doing that. But thank you to everyone who supports us. This has been the review of UnReal. Thank you very much. I'll see you again next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?